Webcam microphone up close.
Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, days and the fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have these two sources. Whenever I try to prove out one of these, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the Ochelli Effect.
Because I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
That's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
Yeah, that is that. It is Saturday night, Saturday. Oh, good evening, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is live. This is the Ochelli Effect. I am Chuck Ochelli. Exhaustion, pain, and discomfort are my badges of honor this evening. Oy, oy, oy. So, tonight, by the way, thank you for listening in on the iTunes stream, the TuneIn app, going to the UCY.TV, a player. Appreciate all that stuff. Thank you. I have no idea where other streams are, but I do hear tell of them elsewhere. So, who knows, and who knows what's coming in the future. So, this is our Saturday night normal kind of thing where I do a feature interview, and with any luck, I'll be joined very shortly by my guest, which is Mr. Dennis Ford. Mr. Dennis Ford is a broadcaster on NWO Truth Radio, does a few interesting shows, which I want him to elaborate about, but I also want to find out about where he came from, because he's definitely different. Not like one of us who has this, sort of performer-like persona that just seems to ooze out of us. I mean, it's real, folks, but, I do think very carefully about the way I do things and do come off a little bit prepared sometimes when really I'm not at all. And I got to say that Dennis does things a little differently. And I've done some shows with him, some interesting shows. I mean, everything from... your typical sort of roundtable discussions all the way to music-based kind of stuff. And hopefully, we will have him on in just a moment. But of course, always fun when we're dealing with the live broadcast, right? Interesting week. The Ferguson story continues to unfold, or continues to seemingly unfold, as it were. Now, of course... backlash on other police officers I hear tell of really briefly, but I'm really just saturated with it. It's just another example of what is wrong all around us, right? And it's just a continuation of the divide and conquer strategy, and I don't see why people don't understand that that's all it is. I don't get it. Also, I'm going to try and get James Corbett to come back on again, because, I did finally take the time to watch that Federal Reserve documentary he did, which I found extremely fascinating, broken down into 3 parts, and anybody who goes on the Ochelli Effect Facebook page got a link to it and everything else. And I got to say, awesome job, as usual. Of course, James has done a lot of interesting work over the years and continuously does cool stuff at CorbettReport.com. And hopefully he'll be getting back to me shortly about coming on and really breaking down that documentary, because it's pretty good. I mean, he says he's not a really great editor or whatever else when it comes to directing, writing, editing his stuff. He says, well, this is my best attempt and etc. But pretty good stuff, I think. And I urge everybody to check it out, because the majority, well, more than the majority, nearly every single thing in there is, part and parcel of what I understand about it. And I also learned a couple things, which I found fascinating. He spent a little bit of time talking to G. Edward Griffin, who, as we all know, is the author of Creature from Jekyll Island, the seminal book on the subject, regarding the formation of the Federal Reserve, and is definitely a Federal Reserve researcher who has enlightened a great many of us, whether you realize it or not, the actual genesis of a lot of the information regarding the Federal Reserve and that system of slavery in particular. Well, a lot of that actually had its seeds with guys like Griffin and Griffin himself, which is why I often point to him regarding some of my issues about Federal Reserve topics. Anyway, so I'm waiting to see. Also, I think the phone lines are open. So if you guys want to join in, we will add to the chaos as soon as Dennis gets in here. And you guys can join in at 718-717-8296, because I believe I was told I have the phones. So, anything on your minds tonight? We can always bounce it off of Dennis and myself in between the feature that I'm going to do on him here, and see where it goes. What else this week? What else this week that I can discuss? Well, I also saw some discussions among some interesting individuals that we would usually find somewhat reliable as far as their information goes in the stream, discussing the effect of 9/11 and discussing how the sort of infighting among many different researchers has caused it to sort of spiral into the same quagmire that the JFK research community has gone into, and this is very true. What can I say here? The idea that the best that we can possibly offer as an argument regarding 9/11 and regarding the JFK assassination is a whole lot of very sort of scholastic academic arguments regarding the particulars on details and things, to point out that the official story is a farce is one thing, but pointing the actual finger at the culprits is yet another, and I find it rather fascinating that a lot of people do avoid that. I'm even somewhat guilty of it, and it's only because I don't like to attach the liability for such things to people on a whim, not without very, very serious, solid evidence. And I am not of the school of thought that a lot of others are. Pretty much everything is unreliable and fabricated and faked, and there's nothing but crisis actors, and the entire thing has been staged, etc., etc. This also brings us into a very bad quagmire, because at the end of the day, in the case of any of these sort of events where people are addressing them directly and trying to do the research, actual first-hand research, not simply reading someone else's and, sort of acclimating it into your own, narrative of what you believe, but actually doing the research yourself, you'll find that a lot of things are nebulous, a lot of things are not quite as black and white as we would like them to be. And, so there's always this sort of suspicion about the evidence. There's always suspicion about the individuals who are telling the stories. People point to certain stories anecdotally without examining them fully or objectively. And, I found this sort of cancer in the JFK research community, that's for sure, where people would latch on to, let's just pull a name at random here, a guy like Gerald Custer, who was an X-ray tech at Bethesda the night of the JFK autopsy. And it seemed as though every time Mr. Custer, who's passed away now, but every time Mr. Custer got himself involved, incorporated into someone's research and started listening to their particular thesis regarding the events, it seemed as though his story would change. And it did change several times, not only in the official record, but even among the unofficial private interviews and research, et cetera, et cetera. And when you have this kind of thing, it becomes suspect, regardless of how much it supports your position or not. And this kind of thing happens with the 9/11 narrative as well. At the end of the day, very few people that make very grand and sweeping statements have not exactly examined the evidence. And, well, it doesn't help our position when you're a 9/11 truther who doesn't do anything but echo somebody else's truth. So, this is the thing, and this is the challenge for all of us regarding these events where obfuscation has been has absolutely been the pattern of behavior among those in the know, those in power. So, I don't know. It's just one of those things that does disturb me from time to time. Like I said, regarding various researchers, regarding their work, their releases of information, et cetera, we often see that that people wind up cherry picking on both sides. Not only those that we would perceive as enemies of the truth, but others that we would think would be more akin to ourselves, often cherry-picking their information, not really objectively viewing the situation or the evidence as it stands, etc., etc. So, let's see, now I've done a dangerous thing and reopened, let's see, all right, hopefully, all right. How you doing? Is that you, Dennis?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Ah, wonderful. I was just sort of vamping there for a little bit and talking about the general sort of condition of the 9/11 research community and JFK, etc. Anyway.
Yeah, I heard some of it. My internet's kind of in and out tonight, so I did hear the opening of the show. So I want to thank you for, the kind of words, Chuck. I am, when I approach doing radio and things like that, I do try to be a little bit different, my own thing. I think we all kind of bring our own personalities to this, but, I try to be a little bit, not out there, but a little bit different than most people that do radio or that are in the movement.
And I got to tell you, I love that, man, because the one thing that I always value above all else is somebody's guts to be an individual. And
right.
That's definitely what you are, my friend, because you're a different kind of guy. And I'll tell a couple of stories really quick. But before I really want to get it, because I do want to get into how you came to be part of this, how you, became awake. That's always the big question when I have somebody on for a one-on-one is,
right.
Where did you pick up on the fact that we've all been lied to,
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah, please. But see, a couple of quick stories. I decided, because I had met some other people that work with Dennis, to go on one of the roundtable shows with him. And the first time I go on there, of course, there was like just this chaos breaking out and arguing and people yelling at each other, which happens on occasion. But I noticed something, and that is that even among the other hosts, no matter where they were from or whatever else, Dennis was the only guy who was not trying to yell.
Right.
And this is the thing. I've never actually heard you start to lose your temper with anybody, and you could have very easily a few times.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I have to pull up a show for you because it's happened a couple times in my early radio shows. We used to get, not trolls, but people that would call in the show and just try to mess with me or mess with people on the show. So there's been a couple times where I've lost it, but I try to not do that. But, it does happen from time to time. More recently with me, I just try to keep it cool, and if I do feel like I'm going to go on an outburst or outlash on somebody on the air, I kind of mute myself and, do my do my thing on mute, and then I come back, I regroup, and try to get back into it. But, we didn't start doing radio, at least I didn't start recently. I mean, I didn't start last week. We've been doing this NWO Truth Radio for almost 3 years now, so yeah, it's happened in the past. I'll pull up a show for you if you want an example of it, because I have went off on the air, but, not yelling, but, being very passionate about this stuff. It happens. It's bound to happen eventually, when you're on the radio.
Oh, absolutely, man. And the cool thing there is that here's what I love, is now I have an explanation. Sometimes when I've been on either roundtable shows or I've done the Arsenal of Sound or whatever with Dennis, I notice he disappears for a little bit. Now I know why. He's yelling on mute. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's usually what I'm doing. I usually, if I get a few minutes, I'll usually fade out to the background for a little bit and try to regroup. Because, again, I mean, in the stuff that we do, Chuck, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can agree. Like I said, it's easy to get very passionate about it. The music show is one thing. That's a labor of love. I really do that because I enjoy music. But when it comes to the Friday night show or the roundtable discussions or any other show that I may be on, I really get into it to a certain level. So it's easy to get very passionate about it, and I just try to maintain a level of level-headedness, at least present some kind of professionalism if I can during the shows. But it has happened. I've learned from past shows that it's really, people will message me after the show. They're like, man, I've never heard you do that, or, I've never seen that side of you. So I try to keep it, away from the radio. I try to approach it with a certain level, like I said, of level-headedness, not to scare people away.
And that's the other thing, is that when you're screaming at people, it's difficult for them to get your points sometimes. I mean, some people love that kind of thing where you wind up, embattled with somebody. But that's never been my style either. See, I don't do that. Even when I disagree with somebody, I ask them honest questions. You know what I mean? I don't sit there and load my questions up. I don't just sit there and attack them. It's not my way of doing things. I'd rather learn one way or another, even when I disagree with somebody. I mean, the crap I took about because I had the guy from the Church of Satan on, and man, people were like, well, wait a minute, you didn't, it's like, well, I'm not going to attack the guy. I actually wanted to point out that there is a difference between the modern Church of Satan and what people are talking about, versus Luciferianism and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite the same thing, that's all. And what better way to do it than to have somebody who is, like a representative of the Church of Satan, basically. I mean,
that's the best way to get, to the root of it, is to actually have somebody on that is experienced in it. I've done that before too. I've had people on. I'm not really a big debate person, even in high school, the debate teams and stuff like that. Just debating in general. I don't know, like getting back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago about getting on the air and losing it. I've learned over the years to kind of not get into certain situations because, it is possible for me to lose it. And I'm not the biggest debate person. I present what I can on my side, and if the other person has something that can change my view or change my opinion about something, I'm open to that. I'm not going to shut them down and be like, hey, I'm going to mute you off my show, and that's it. And, I try not to approach it that way. I try to have an open mind when it comes to things, even if it's something that I don't necessarily agree with, because we're all here to learn, let's be honest about it. I try to learn new things every day if I can. If it's a simple thing or just how to cook something, I try to learn just the littlest things I can every day, and especially when it comes to this stuff. I try to attain.
Useful information is useful information, man. It doesn't matter. And I always try to pick up something during my show and not, I'm not like an authority on everything. This is not my style. I'm actually trying to learn from my guests, regardless of whether I totally agree with them or not. I've had plenty of guests on that I totally agree with, but then again, I've had, the wild card where I'm not sure where it's going. And, and it's just, that's the way it is. So, all right, let me ask you this. Like, okay, so you've been doing this for about 3 years, right?
Yeah, give or take.
Okay,
yeah.
So what, first of all, everybody always asks, like, why is it that you want to, like people that are outside of it, they always say, why do you want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, well, when I realized that, the government was lying to me, when I realized the media was lying to me, when I realized that we were being taught lies in school, I just had this urge to try and turn it back over. I mean, it was necessary as far as I was concerned to get out there and do what I could to change the consciousness, to try and get to the reality of the world around us. And but there's usually a trigger event, and everybody, a lot of people will say, well, it's 9/11, or it's, or it's this or that. It depends. I mean, well, first of all, how old are you?
I'll actually be 32 in September 12th. So I'll be 32 coming up here soon.
See, so you're like 10 years younger than me, right? But you were still plenty old enough to remember 9/11. I mean, was that what did it, or what happened?
Well, before we get into the origins of that, I forgot to do this at the top of the show. I want to thank you, Chuck, for having me on. It's a beautiful thing when we can work together and merge. And you're always welcome on my show. I know you've been joining us for last few weeks or whatever, so you're more than welcome anytime to call in, and you know that. But anyways, I just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on tonight, because I'm trying to branch out and do other shows outside of NWO Truth Radio, and you are helping me do that. So first of all, I want to thank you. But yeah, when it comes to the origins of when I got into really heavy research and actually applying it to Facebook and doing radio shows, 9/11 was sort of the beginning of it. 9/11 was the day where I started realizing, things happen in the world. Big, massive events like 9/11 can happen. And at the time, much like everybody else in this country, I was in fear. I was angry. I was, the gauntlet of emotions. I was very confused at that time. But anyways, 9/11 was sort of the beginning of it. Later on, in my mid-20s, I was about 25, 26. I had a good friend of mine that had these, DVDs that he was giving out. And he would usually give out the movies, or, it'd be like a box, a bootleg, basically. Be like, this movie's out, here's the bootleg of it if you want it. So I was looking through his DVDs one day, and I came across this DVD about the hip-hop artist. And it was like hip-hop artist, Illuminati, with the all-seeing eye and everything on it. So I was like, what is this? And I had heard of the word Illuminati before, just through hip-hop music, old-school hip-hop. There's some artists that have thrown it in their music, and I was always like, that's a pretty weird word. I wasn't really sure what it was. But anyways, I came across this DVD, and it kind of, when I started watching it started kind of letting me know that there were other things out there that maybe could manipulate governments and maybe could manipulate the entertainment industry. And I started going into it deeper and deeper and deeper, and that was kind of like the snowball effect. But even before then, even before 9/11, when I was a child, when I was growing up as a teenager, I always had a gut feeling that, this world is pretty brutal. There's something wrong with the world, and I could never really put my finger on it. And when I was growing up, I used to always ask questions because, as you're a child, they're always like, hey, ask questions. There's no stupid questions. So I would always ask questions, and my parents and teachers and older people never really had good answers for me. Some of them did, some of them didn't, but I was always the kind of person all throughout my life to ask questions about everything. So that was kind of the real beginning, is when I reached a certain age where I started becoming aware of my surroundings. And then, again, 9/11 happened, and after 9/11, I really started to question things. I was like, well, how, if our government is so, if they tell us our government is so massive and so, overpowering, how could something like this happen in our country? So I started researching after 9/11, and then, like I said, I came across this DVD and other things, other people in the alternative news media. I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm pretty sure you know who I'm referring to. Yeah. Everybody from, Mr. Jones to Dice to all these people. I started coming across their work, and I started coming across things that I wasn't aware of, things that, most people in today's society, if you start talking to them about it, they might leave the room or may get angry at you because they don't really want to delve into that. And I deal with that constantly with family members and coworkers, people I interact with on a daily basis.
See,
they may have a question. They may have a question. Well, they may have a question about politics or something like that, but they don't really want to get into this stuff. So I deal with it on a daily basis with people that I really respect, and I wish that they would open their mind a little bit to what's really going on. But yeah, that's kind of the origins. It's not really a big, elaborate story with me. That's just kind of how I came into all this.
No, but it is interesting though, because I've never had anybody talk about the hip hop link to the Illuminati as being one of the things that woke them up. Right. And that's something that's different, definitely, about you. But also, I mean, I always had that terrible tendency to have to ask the embarrassing questions, because just when things didn't make sense, they didn't make sense. Now, when it came to 9/11 for me, I admit it all the time that when it happened, I was caught up in it. I was all about the whole, let's go and vaporize these people. Because they struck us, they hurt us. And then, as the story started to trickle out over the next couple of years, things started making no sense, just like they had. And here's the funny part to me is that, like I've told the story before too, that, I realized the government lied to me on a personal level when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But as I did the JFK research, it was obvious the government lied about stuff, but it's like, well, they just try to cover up this or that. Maybe there's selected kind of things that they're after as far as keeping them, on the under the radar for the public at large, right? Because otherwise the public might rise up against them. This is a foolish thing I was believing for a long time. I didn't realize that we were faced with, really a huge control mechanism. They were controlling the arguments, they were controlling the discussions, they were controlling the information about every single event as it happened in real time. And once you get a hold of that in your mind, the game's over, man. You don't trust anything anymore, the way I see it. You know?
Well, like you said earlier, before I came on, it's sort of like a necessity at this point. It's not really that I'm curious or I'm trying to find out what's really going on. I think it's really necessary that we try to do our best to get the information out to people, whether it's facts on 9/11, whatever it may be. If hip-hop, is your thing, I'm sure I can have a good discussion about hip-hop music with you for a good hour or two. So whatever people are passionate about, you got to kind of like hit with them. One of the big ones for me that I've been able to have some success with communicating with people is Monsanto. I can always find somebody that's interested basically in what we're putting in our bodies as food, so people are instantly able to identify with that, and you can really hit home with them. And if you can get them to be anti-Monsanto or change their views about, if they didn't even know about Monsanto, if you can actually create awareness in that person, that's a beautiful thing. So I agree with you. I think it's a necessity at this point to actually be involved and interact with people. And, if you're doing a radio show, I had one friend not too long ago. He was like, that's something that you do that you're passionate about, but it's really a small thing. And to me, it's not a small thing. To me, it's really massive and huge, because we have the impact and the tools and everything we need to actually interact with people. And I wanted to talk about that real quick with my origins and stuff, because I forgot that part.
A while back. We should get into that, yeah.
A while back, after I started researching and finding out these things, I was running around like beating my head, because I was like, I wonder, obviously nobody in my community or people in my family or anybody knows about this. So right about that time, I was getting into the computers. I had a job where I had a computer, and I would sit in a cubicle or whatever. And I started logging into social media, and I started meeting people through the Ron Paul groups. And then I started meeting other people that were actually talking about the things that I was interested in. And like I said, via some of the other names in alternative news media, I met some wonderful people. And I started talking and conversating with people. And one day, I met a friend named Scott on Facebook, and he was talking to me. He was like, hey, I'm doing a show on, I'm doing a radio broadcast. Would you like to join me? Because I know, you're interested in this stuff, and I would love to have you on and talk about it one night. And I was like, okay. And at the time, I didn't know anything about really broadcasting or doing any of that. Mm-hmm. So he had me on, and ever since then, it's the same kind of thing that happened with Brandon Council. Brandon was my first guest, and same thing that happened with him happened with me. I kind of got bit by the bug, the radio bug, and really got into doing this. And I do it because, like I said, it's important that we do it, but also it's a form of release for me after a hectic week. after work, after researching all week long, and all these things that come across our news feed, et cetera, it's actually a release or a therapy for me to get on the radio and actually vent a little bit. So I love doing radio, and that's kind of where the origin started for me doing radio. And ever since then, you know, I haven't looked back, man. There's times when I don't want to do it, and I'm sure, Chuck, you can relate to that. I mean, there's times when you really don't want to get into all this or actually do a show on a night, you know, a particular night. But I always try to find something inside of me that keeps me moving. So I just keep doing what I'm doing. And, you know, like I said, I think it's very vital that we're doing what we're doing, because you never know, man. People may be on your news feed on Facebook. They may be tuning into your radio shows. They may never comment. They may never like anything. They might have been somebody you went to high school with or a family friend, and they never say anything, but they're listening, and they're actually learning, and they're just off to the side. They don't really want to get into it. But there are friends that I went to school with and family members that came back to me, you know, a year later or something. They're like, you know what, you were right. You know, I should have listened to you at the time, and what about this? And, you know, people are starting to really question things, and I think that's important, man. I think it's a good thing that we're doing. You know, along with all the ridicule that I'm sure you get, because I get it. You know, people are, oh, they're going to knock on your door, or they're going to come get you, and I'm like, okay, you know, that's fine. I understand that. I understand the risk involved when I got into it, but for me, that's not really important. You know, I think it's important to do what we're doing, and, you know, at this point, all of us are sort of journalists. You know, we take the information. I take the information whenever it comes across my news feed, and I cross-reference it as much as I can before I even post it, just to make sure I'm not posting any nonsense. And sometimes I do. You know, we're not perfect. I do post news stories sometimes that are not 100% accurate, but I try my best to, you know, get to the core of, or the bottom of the stories before I post them.
Oh, right. And you know what? Even when we make mistakes, sometimes we increase awareness anyway. And, you know, the impact is something that is often, you know, especially from people outside of this kind of stuff, they often try to point at us and say, listen, you know, how much good do you think you're going to do? Let's just say you're right about everything, which they don't believe. Right. Let's just say you're right about everything. How much good are you going to do with your little radio audience? You know, and here's the thing, man. If you change one mind, if you get one person to understand something that they didn't before, if you educate one individual or get them to open their eyes, you know, you have no idea what the effect may be.
Exactly.
You know, I often describe it as, you know, maybe it is a problem that there are so many raindrops falling in the ocean, because we are all a bunch of raindrops falling in the giant ocean of problem here. Yeah. But the reality is that, man, if enough of them fall into the ocean, the tides will shift. You know, and this is something that I did take note of not too long ago too, because you know, with the situation in Ferguson, right?
Yep.
Now, of course, they seized upon that, you know, with the normal divide and conquer, you know, sort of strategy that they use regarding race, regarding this, you know, regarding class warfare, because that's very convenient and still very accessible to people that are not very young. Because I've got to say that the younger people among us seem to not be preoccupied with this kind of nonsense so much. I think they've actually felt the influence from, you know, sort of our screwed up generations, dropping at least one good thing on them, which is that, you know, people are people and you need to accept them as they are. You know what I mean? Like that message at least made it. You know, but when they seized upon all this stuff, I found it remarkable that we were confronted by the mainstream seizing terms like, you know, militarized police force. And there was even, you know, guys on CNN live during the, you know, allegedly live during the events of and blah, 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 that were sitting there and pointing and looking at a police officer with a sniper rifle out on top of an armored vehicle and saying something is wrong with this picture.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, and it was almost like, gee, I don't want to declare victory here, but maybe we're making a difference that way on the back end. You know what I mean? Where it's like they're forced to confront some of this stuff because, look, if all of us are screaming about it, you know, and not all of us agree on everything, but but generally speaking, you know, I can't find an alternative or, you know, new media broadcast or anything that doesn't agree that the way that the civilian police forces are functioning in this country, at the very least, is out of control. And you know, one way or another, some people seize on the whole thing about dogs being shot. some people seize upon the various videos that come out and everything else. I still am extremely disturbed by the Kelly Thomas situation. Still.
Yeah, that's still an open wound for a lot of people, the Kelly Thomas situation. And again, you're absolutely right. When it comes to the police in this country, it is becoming a police state if it already hasn't. But people don't really understand when you're talking to somebody about this Ferguson situation. I mean, that could have been any of us, white, black, whatever. I mean, that could have been a split-second decision where, that could have been somebody that you knew, or that could have been you yourself. So again, for me, it's not really a racial thing. If that cop was African American and he shot that kid, I would still feel the same way I do about the police in this country. I think that we really need to address that issue instead of addressing, the race thing, because as you know, Chuck, that's one of their aces in the hole is the race issue. They have to keep pushing that. Me growing up, my sister, we had different fathers, and her father is actually African American. So for me, racism was not something I never really grasped the concept of what racism was, because I just wasn't raised that way. My parents always instilled in me, treat people like Martin Luther King said. I'm quoting loosely here, but judge a man by the content of his character and not the color of his skin. And I've always kind of done that. And race is just something that these people in power, the people that have an agenda that they want to fulfill, is something that I don't think we'll ever see the end of it, because they really want to keep driving that home to keep us divided. The whole divide and conquer thing. They have to have the racism issue in there to keep us all separated and keep us all bickering at each other. So when you see, the new Black Panthers party showing up, or Al Sharpton, or any of these people showing up, there was even rumors of the KKK showing up down there, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah, that was awfully interesting. KKK need to change in their letters for FBI, generally speaking. But
right.
Because that's the funny part is that when people study a lot of this stuff about the Klan and the history of the Klan, in the 20th century, the majority of the time, if you dig deep enough, you'll find that the real agitators, the people that were at the head of the groups, the people that were really spearheading those movements, were FBI agents. And why would they do that? I wonder, Dennis.
Yeah, they constantly do that with whether it's crisis actors or agent provocateurs in the crowd. There was a report coming out of Ferguson where people were throwing bottles or something at the police officers, and that's they might have been part of the protesters, but that's just gives you an example that they will implant people inside the movement to spark something or create more than it, to blow it out of proportion. So they are capable of doing that. And anybody that looks up Al Sharpton, you'll find out that he was an FBI informant.
That's right. Confidential informant. Al Sharpton.
So I don't think the people in Ferguson know that. Somebody should tell them.
Well, see, for me, I wouldn't even have to know that if I was one of those people, and I didn't even know who Al Sharpton was, which unfortunately I do know who he is. But, and I still remember, the Tawana Brawley thing and, the Crown Heights deal and all this stuff that he pulled, but let's leave it all aside. Let's imagine I have no idea who he is. And I know I do things in sort of a comedic fashion once in a while, but tell me something. If you look at this guy, you don't see that his head don't match his body, and that doesn't bother you to begin with? I mean, something is wrong. And then, okay, let's dig into his past, because he looks, a little bit like, a Bizarro World kind of cartoon character that might be at an amusement park somewhere, coming soon at Six Flags, Sharpie. But he's a little disturbing, man. And the fact that people, have ascribed legitimacy to this character, and, he's got his MSNBC hours and whatever else he does now, and he's like a spokesperson. It's like obligatory, and really, it's also strange because, of course, they hauled in Jesse Jackson, who's another guy who, I'm sorry, man, if you can't see that there is something wrong with the picture again, really adjust your screen, because something is wrong.
Well, my whole thing, yeah, you're absolutely right, and my whole thing is, too, is that, these random occurrences where black youth are murdered by police officers, whatever the circumstances are, they're killed by police officers. That's one thing. I can understand the outrage and people, especially if they're unarmed or whatever the story may be. I can understand the outrage and people contacting Al Sharpton and whatnot. But you never see Al Sharpton or Jesse or any of these people up there in Chicago telling, the Chicago youth to stop killing each other, because when it comes to black on black crime in Chicago, they really don't have anything to say about it. They really don't. I don't know if it affects them or it bothers them, but that's not a real issue to them. This is a big issue because the media is there. Al Sharpton is not going to be there unless the media and the cameras are there. Well, in my opinion.
Because you can't pimp the enemy thing, and I get in trouble for saying that, but I'm telling you, it's race pimping, and it goes on both sides. It's like the narrative is, and here we go. Here's where I'm going to say some disturbing stuff, and everybody's just going to have to deal with it for a minute. But the fact is that when you come to the so-called white narrative, what you get is, well, these people act this way, and this is why things happen because these people, and they're already creating this group, this subgroup of individuals which are not part of their people, but are part of some other group of people. You know what I mean? And outrage in a community can happen any which way. Now, it does seem as though when you have an economic situation where people are seriously repressed because they're just, look, man, poverty causes desperation. That's a guarantee. You're going to have people act out more in a poverty situation than not. It's just going to happen because you can only push somebody so far. You can only swallow them up and enslave them so far before they're going to jump up. Now, notice I didn't say anything about, well, this is the situation with, blacks have been the victims, and therefore this is the way this has gone. I didn't say that. I said in economic sense, when you step on somebody long enough, eventually they're going to stand up and be angry. And that could be any collective of people that are in a community. And, it's true that in many communities, like appearing individuals do seem to gravitate toward one another. This does happen. This is a reality. But it's not the real issue here in my estimation. And just to clarify about the whole thing, even if this kid, strong-armed himself some blunts and was being confrontational with the police officer and everything else, the last time I checked, that crime is not punishable by death.
No, not at all.
So there's still something wrong with the system here.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I didn't mention about race. I didn't talk about the race of the police officer. I could give, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care at all because I was just as angry. I was angry about this when I first heard about it. That's the truth, and it had nothing to do with what color this kid was. And like I said, that Kelly Thomas thing, the reason why it made me sick wasn't because of the color of his skin. I had no idea. If you looked at that video, it didn't really matter anyway. It was just that the fact was this guy was begging for his life, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, where, are we not, don't we have any empathy left where that's not something that, moves us to maybe say, there's a problem here?
No. I don't think in modern day society, when it comes to a situation like Ferguson, the first thing that people, well, not for me, but a good portion of people in society, the first thing that's going to run through their head is what color was the kid, what color was the officer. For me, the first time I heard the story, I was like, oh, okay, more police brutality, more cops taking the law into their own hands. And that's, whatever happened to, tasers and stuff. I mean, you could have tased him, restrained him, did whatever you had to do, but apparently this cop was very angry with this individual, so he did what he did. But again, I don't look at it as a race issue myself. I look at it as, like you were saying, we need to focus on the core of the problem, and that's the police in this country and what they are doing, because when they do stuff like this, they're never held accountable. They may go to trial, they may whatever, but majority of the time it's a 2-week paid vacation, and they come back and they get their job back. Maybe not with that department, but with another one. Right. So we need to address that, and we need to let these cops know that they're not above the law. If you murder somebody, you should be held accountable. Just like, if that was one of us, Chuck, we'd be in prison for the rest of our lives, possibly sent to death for that. So they need to be held accountable. A badge shouldn't put them above the law, in my opinion. So we need to address that issue, in my opinion.
Well, right, we do need to address that issue, and that's not even to say that there aren't justifiable uses of force like that sometimes. It does happen.
Yeah, it does happen.
And I'm not even passing judgment on all of it. I mean, I say look at everything on a case-by-case basis, that's for sure. But when people want to, draw these lines regarding race and everything else, it just, again, I'm astonished that people are still buying this, nonsense.
Right.
It should not be about that. It's again, and I told you this when it first happened. We were on the air doing something totally unrelated, but I told you straight away, my whole problem here is, again, that there is, as far as colors go, my problem is with the red, because there was way too much blood being spilled domestically in this country by law enforcement agents against the civilian population. It's happening too much.
Thank you.
That's all there is to it. And I don't care if it's, Hispanics. I don't care if it's whites. I don't care if it's Asians. I don't care who it is. This is not supposed to be this way in this country, period.
Right.
So, and the outrage that should have come along with, your local police forces being given these armored police carriers and sniper rifles and extra military training, which, by the way, you notice how that got snuck right in there, that President Barry there is going to turn around and tell us that we're going to have to take a look at situations like this. They may need more training.
Right.
Nobody even seized upon that when it was like, it might need some more training.
They might.
They might. A little something called empathy, might be something you might want to train them about. A little something called, humility might be something you might want to train them about. And I'm not saying that 100% of law enforcement officers are like this, but man, there are too many of them. That's what the thing is. It's not like the aberration. This is 1 in a million. This is now becoming a culture among law enforcement, and they're recruiting new guys every day. And I'm not saying they're all evil either, but if they're being given the idea that this is the culture, this is the way things are, this is the status quo, what are we going to get left with but more shot dogs, more of these Michael Brown type incidents, more of these Kelly Thomas type incidents, where, again, as you said, nobody's ever held accountable.
No,
even when there is media outrage, what happens? The guy disappears, right?
Yeah, it continues, like you were saying. I mean, it's just continuing to happen, and there's going to be more situations like this. Another thing for people to look at is, when people are protesting, I'm not talking about the rioting and stuff like that, because that's completely unacceptable to begin with.
No. By no means are we supporting rioting and looting.
No, not at all.
And destroying your own communities.
No, not at all.
Nobody is supporting that. That's just foolishness. I understand the frustration, but the point is, all you're doing is harming yourselves with that, and risking your own lives and risking the lives of the people around you. So nobody is going to endorse that. But
what I was getting at, when I was getting at there is, I don't advocate for rioting and things like that, but the protesting, that's one aspect of it. But when you got people on one side, we continue to see this too, Chuck. We got people on one side with signs. That's why I always post that on my Facebook page. I'm so angry that I made a sign, because that's what we get. We get people making signs, and protesting and chants and marches and all this other stuff. While on the other side, we see basically stormtroopers, police in full riot gear with tanks and all this military style weaponry pointing at these people. And I don't understand why that continues to happen. Now, I'm not saying that we should beef up and have guns pointed at them, but that should give people a glimpse that when these situations happen, all it takes is something to happen, and they're not going to – I don't see these cops hesitating to murder people or use these weapons. So I'm really getting tired of seeing, like, the protest scenario where it's the people on one side, don't even have bulletproof vests on or anything, and then you look on the other side, and it's just like it blows your mind when you look at some of this stuff, when you see the cops, what they're wearing and the weapons that they have. And some of them are non-lethal weapons and all that, but I can guarantee you if something went down, they would be using those weapons. That's what they're for. I think the cops are like flexing their muscle, to let people know, hey, you better stay in line or we'll kill you.
Well, right, and for people that don't understand how this has evolved, remember that when 4 students were killed or shot at Kent State by the National Guard, this was like a national tragedy. This was like an outrage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, some gunshots are fired into a crowd. Well, maybe somebody got killed. Well, it was actually non-lethal rounds. A bunch of people were, tear gassed and everything else. This is now acceptable stuff. But when there was military action against civilians that were protesting in the past, it was a big deal. But it's gotten more normalized, I think.
Right. I think at the end of the day, man, protesting and these things are good. At a certain point. But I think this is going to be an intellectual struggle that we're going to have to approach here in the future, going into the next few years and on down the road. I think we're going to have to approach this in an intellectual mind frame, because I don't see us winning with the protests and the marches and stuff. If we ever are going to win, I don't think that's the way to do it. Again, that's just my view of it. We do have the Million Mask March coming up in D.C. on November 5th, and I'm planning on going. Again, I'm not in Anonymous. I do support some of the stuff that they do. I have some good friends that are in Anonymous, but I'm not part of that group. But again, the marches, the protests, and things like this, I think we need to figure out something else. And I'm talking about strictly nonviolence. I'm very, very vocal about my nonviolence approach to any of this. Like, I think violence should be the last resort to any kind of situation. But again, Chuck, everybody out there is not like me. There's people out there that violence is the first thing that they're going to run to. But I think it should be an intellectual thing. I think we're all smart, intelligent people, and I think we could come up with something that would really bring them to their knees without even shooting one bullet or even protesting once. But what that is, I couldn't really tell you. But I have some ideas that I've been shooting around for a few years. But I think that's where we need to go, the direction we need to go in, instead of, protesting and marching and all that stuff, which, again, I said is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But I think, at this point it's proven that it's really not doing much. It's just moments in history that you go back and you look and you say, okay, well, people got together and they showed their frustrations, and then everybody went home. And that's what we continue to see. No real change or anything.
Well, see,
we don't see anything.
That's true, and that's why I seized upon, I think it was about a month and a half ago, I started saying every once in a while, repeating something from a song, the revolution will not be televised.
Right.
Well, and I would say that the revolution will not be televised, and it will not be on the internet either. And I was kind of backhanded doing that, because I was saying that, look, if there's really, truly a revolution, all this stuff will get shut down. That'll be the end of it. But another reality to that, and the reason why I think that is still a seriously profound statement, is that the true revolution, the true change that's going to occur as far as us as a people is not going to be generated by violence. It's not going to be generated by protest. It may have some part to play in it, but the reality is, unless we begin to change ourselves, we begin to change our psychology, we begin to change our spirit, we begin to change who we are. In fact, we will not be able to affect the greater changes that we wish to, in the rest of the world at large. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, you're getting it. See, I appreciate people like yourself, Chuck, because, again, you do kind of, not open your mind, but you kind of get where I'm going with that. And, that's a beautiful thing, man. I think for all of us, I know you have a child now. I don't know if you've had a child before that, but there's a child that you brought into the world, and, when you're a grandfather and they come to you and they say, hey, Grandpa, what did you do, back then to, hopefully by then it won't be the way it is now, but if it is, they might ask you the question, be like, hey, what did you do to prevent, this world that we're living in, or what did you do to make an impact and actually, because that's what I'm doing it for. I'm fighting for the future generations. I mean, it's important that we live in a better world, but I think 20 years down the road from now, these kids that are going to grow up in the world that we're leaving them, they're not going to be happy, man. They're really going to be, PO. They're going to be mad, man. And I don't want to tell my grandchildren, that I sat around and did nothing. I watched football, and I went to work, and I wasn't involved in any kind of quote unquote revolution or any of that. If it's going to happen,
right?
I want to tell them that.
you don't want to say, well,
lines.
You don't want to say, well, grandson, what I did was I participated in some false tribalism and I chased around Federal Reserve notes and
right.
got kind of lost.
Wasting my time, basically.
Yeah. Which of course, we all do have the tendency and the need actually at this point to still be chasing those Federal Reserve notes because we haven't found a solution for that yet. But
right.
Anyway, but the fact is that that you have actually struck upon exactly why it is I do what I do. Actually, I have 2 older children, also.
Right.
Frankie is brand new, just over a couple months old. And, this is exactly why I had to lend my voice to this, because I had to at least do what I could to begin to change, like I said, that change on the spiritual level, that change on the psychological level, in any way that I can participate in it, even in the smallest way. And I'm not even looking to be like one of the big, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it's about for me. I mean, look, I'll take a paycheck if somebody wants to give me one, but I'm not going to do it contingent on well, you can only say this and you can only say that. I'm not doing it. But but the reality is, if somebody wants to pay me to affect this change, I'll gladly take it. But
I'm not going to turn it down either. But at the same time. Again, I didn't get into this for any kind of boost in my own ego or to become an internet celebrity or any of that. I got into this because, like I said earlier, I think it's vital. I think at this point in human history, I think it's what's needed. And I'm a proud American. I love this country. I don't necessarily love the government. I don't agree with what they do or what they have been doing since even before I was put on this planet. But I do love this country, and I think this country and the world can see better days. Like you said, if we approach it differently, if we approach it, again, because we're not stupid people, man. We're very intelligent. Majority of us, I mean, I'm not a college scholar. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but I do know if something, that's the definition of insanity, Chuck, is if you continue to do the same things and expect different results, that's insanity. So we got to approach it a little bit different. We got to change up our approach to this whole situation. Not just the cop issue, not just Monsanto, not the shadow governments, not the secret societies, all that combined into one thing. We got to approach it in a different approach. We got to find out a different way to not necessarily attack it, but to dismantle it. And I think that, if we all came together, we all put our minds together, we could actually see change in this country and in the world. I think we could actually see that day. But again, if you're biblical, I don't know if you're into religion that much, Chuck, but the biblical aspect of it is I talk to some people in the Christian faith or whatever it may be, and they're like, we just got to ride this out because it's going to get worse and Jesus is going to come back. And I understand all that, but I think at a certain point we can prevent that for a little bit longer, maybe, maybe for another 100 years, 50 years, maybe we can prevent the onslaught of what we are all driving towards at a fast rate right now, because we all know it's coming. Like something big, not necessarily something big is going to happen, but the things that have already taken place and the things that already happened, we kind of already know the road that we're on. And like I said, the kids that are being born now and the future generations are going to look back and look at look at what we were doing in the 2000s after 9/11 and be like, what were you people doing? Why were you not in the streets? Why were you not really trying to impact and make change? And it becomes hard because, like you said, we all are raindrops, all of us. We're just falling into an ocean or whatever it may be, and we're trying to impact people and get people motivated. But again, this is not a popular subject. This is not something, it hasn't caught on that way in what we do and what we research and what we talk about. It hasn't become the popular norm, so people are going to shy away from it. At this point, me, you, and everybody else that does what we do, unless you communicate with people in the movement, if you want to call it that, you're an outcast when it comes to society. Because I don't contribute to a lot of things that people do like I used to before, when we were all, quote unquote, still asleep, before we took the pill or whatever. I don't contribute to any of that stuff anymore. So I've lost friends and I've sacrificed a lot for this. And I think at a certain point, I think everybody should have to make that decision. Do you want to continue to contribute to the madness, or do you want to change and you want to see a better world for our future generations? And like I said, right now it's not popular. It's not something that's going to get you, all the ladies. It's not, I mean, you may meet a few different women or whatever if that's your thing, but it's not something that's, popular. It's not the popular decision, especially when everybody has been told since birth, this is just the way life is, and of course we've been lied to since we've been born, but hey, what can you do about it?
Well,
nothing you can do.
See, and therein lies part of the point too, because after all, okay, I put it this way. Sometimes I say, look, I love the country that I was told I live in.
Right.
I love the country that I was told was here. The problem is it's not really here anymore. It has all changed. We are dealing with the American empire. This was not what it was meant to be. And the deal is that even at my point in my life, right, I'm 10 years older than you, and I say to myself a lot of times, well, what is it that people were doing, when I was real small, when I was, before I was even here on this planet? I mean, did they not realize that they were looking at the collapse of what was, Yep. And of course, everybody, we can easily point to the Federal Reserve and how that has become, the ubiquitous problem in this nation, essentially. And we can look at it now. We're going to approach very, very soon here, not the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve, which went by, but without very much notice, even in the alternative media. Right. But the 101st anniversary, I think it's time that we take these people to school and give them the 101 on it, because the bottom line is that whether you understand it or not, you have been born into and given the express faith in a system which is a fiction, which is a control, which is slavery at its roots. That's all there is to it. And I've said it before that slavery is what my issue is. I do not want my children to be slaves. I do not want my grandchildren to be slaves. Regardless of what you think of, as far as the biblical aspect goes, or or whatever else, it doesn't matter. I still don't want slavery. I want free will to be the thing that it was meant to be. Well,
it's funny, Chuck, because in this country, we're told again since childhood, this is the land of the free, but it's not. It's sort of freedom, but not very much. And if we have any, it's very limited. We need a license. We need all these things to even function in their. I hate to say there, but in the system.
Well, slowly but surely, our freedoms became privileges.
Right. Right. Thank you.
And this is the thing. It has, but you know what? Another thing that we gotta address here really quickly, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me, although I've never asked you this before. You have to agree, though, that since this was not done overnight, since this was not done instantaneously, since this was done over time, I mean, we love to use the boiling frog analogy. Fact is, it's going to take some time to affect the revolution that needs to occur here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not something that we will be able to assemble or to be able to make happen overnight. You can't change the psychology of a people in a day. It just doesn't happen. Even in the day and age when you can instantaneously communicate with each other across the planet, it does give us the opportunity for unification, but it also gives us the opportunity to accentuate those old squabbles again. And
I agree.
This is yet again another continuation. I always say that the technology as it has evolved, is the extreme double-edged sword, because it gives us the greatest access to information if we can discern which information is real and which is not. So we're still stuck with the fabrication versus the reality, and it all has to do with one's own ability to think and to sift through it. It's like your own personal sifter, as far as I'm concerned. When you take the sand sifter and you shake through, and you wind up with some seashells at the beach or whatever. Well, you got to be able to constantly do that, and it takes an effort. It's not something that is just going to come to you in a singular epiphany one day. Wow, I now see the whole of the world the way it's supposed to be. And the way it actually is, and now what I have to do is bridge the gap between what is and what should be.
Right.
This is not the way it's going to roll. You know, it's going to be gradual because, again, we didn't get to this condition overnight. It means that it's going to take, you know, not necessarily the same amount of time. I think we can actually affect the change faster if we can just get more people to open their eyes. And
yeah, I agree with that.
And
I think at the same time,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think at the same time with you know, everything we do on a daily basis, you know, again, like I said, there's days when I don't even want to log into Facebook or do radio shows, and I learned early on it's a lot of repetition of repeating yourself over and over again. Some people get it, and some people don't. Also, every other day, you may have somebody new coming into it, and they're like, hey, man, I'm just now, you know, learning this stuff. I don't really know where to begin. So I have to go inside my brain and really go back to when I was doing the same thing, when I was taking the baby steps. So it's a lot of going over the same stuff that you've been over multiple times and trying to, you know, I take a lot of notes, have a lot of notebooks where I can go back and I can pull up stuff that I've talked about on past shows or past research that I've done, and that helps a lot. But you're right, it's not going to be, you know, we're not going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to change. It's going to take a little bit of time, and I knew that getting into this. But at the same time, when I did get into it, I was like, I want to go, you know, I want to take the ball and run with it, and I want to do everything I can to make an impact and make a change. Now, not everybody's going to do that. You know, there's people that know the stuff that we know, and they're very reclusive about talking about it. Or they're, you know, I had a friend come to me a couple weeks ago. He was like, you know, we grew up together, we went to high school together and everything. And I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he was like, yeah, man, I know about the stuff you're talking about, and I would love to listen to your show and everything else, but you know, he's kind of in that boat where he's like, I don't see any good outcome to this, so he doesn't really pursue it the way I would or you would or anybody else. So we have that too, and I just try to encourage people. You know, if it's the littlest things that you may think that are not making an impact, they are, because I'm always proven right about that. Because, like I said, I have people come to me a year later, a month later, 6 months later, and they're like, hey, man, you know, whatever it may be, whatever the news story was, whatever thing I was discussing, they come back and they're like, hey, you know, I did my own research, and come to find out, you were pretty accurate in what you were talking about. So I do see that. I see these little glimmers of hope and, you know, my faith in humanity being restored. But at the same time, yeah, it's not gonna be tomorrow. It may be 20 years from now, but it has to happen. And, you know, I use the word revolution loosely because, you know, overthrowing a government is pretty massive. You know, that's going to take some time. And as long as we are continuing, you know, as long as we have people in society that continue to fuel the monster, then we're going to be fighting an uphill battle, in my opinion. I think we have to, especially with this election coming up, you know, I would love to see everybody sit at home and not vote on that day and just see what happened. You know, if everybody in America, even if we got a couple million people to just not contribute to the madness, I would love to see what kind of lies and fabrications that they would come up with. They're like, oh, he won anyways. You know, here's the votes, and all these people voted, but they didn't vote. So I would just love to see what the mainstream and D.C. would come up with. But I would love to see in the next election, man, just people not contributing. You know, don't vote. I understand that people will have that embedded in their mind that if you don't vote, you can't complain. But I feel the opposite, man. I feel like if you vote, you're part of the problem. You know, because you keep giving these people, you know, even if our votes matter, Chuck, we don't even know, you know, if our votes matter. Because, again, I voted for Ron Paul. I voted for Ron Paul when he was running against Mitt Romney here in Virginia to see who was going to, you know, be on the ballot. And I went, the middle school was like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes away from my house. So I went, I voted, I came back home, I turned on television. When I turned on television, they had already projected Mitt Romney and took Virginia. And I was like, well, what the hell why did I even go vote? You know, like I could have saved my time. But that's what I'm saying, that we don't even know if our votes are accurate or even matter.
Well, so, yeah, and in the old days, that would have mattered a lot because they used to release those so-called exit polls and everything else to try and get to discourage people. Well, there's no point in me voting; you already lost.
Right.
You know, but that's, you know, that's again. But I love how you made sure to bring that up, because that's the way I feel about it, is that these guys aren't elected anymore. They've been selected, and they're generally just corporate spokespeople for one corporation or another. You know, it's sort of like a bunch of poker players arguing with each other at the table, man. And
Right.
we are not sitting at the table. You know, as the people that are supposed to be, you know, the government of, for, and by the people. You know, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at, well, here's your choices, and regardless of what you actually choose, here's what you're going to get anyway.
Right.
You know, and,
Right.
And look, even if you don't choose what we tell you to choose, well, you know, look, now we have these electronic systems. We can just tell you that's the way the votes went, and there you go. You
Right,
know?
and that's part of the problem. You know, that's a big issue for me because, again, in the elections, okay, Ron Paul is a whole nother example of politician. But when it comes to the presidential elections and et cetera, it's always, you know, vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, why are you voting for evil at all? You know, why even vote for evil, even if it's a lesser evil? That doesn't even make sense to me. And that's just something that we're told to accept. It's like, hey, we know politics are corrupt, and that's just the way it is. Vote for one of these two people, and that's just the way it's going to be. And then when you vote, you don't even know if your vote matters. So I would just love to see people not vote or contribute to it at all. But, again, we're fighting a monster. We're fighting, you know, there's people that really are passionate about voting in their political party.
And even in the event that we had the Ron Paul candidacy, you know, here's another interesting thing to me, is that there was no way that he was going to get any play at all unless he, of course, subscribed to one of the major two parties. There was no way, you know, like he wasn't really a Republican.
No, not at all.
You know, but he had to co-opt himself with those people in order to get himself out there.
Yeah,
which
play
is
ball.
An unfortunate thing. I mean, realistically, I mean, if he were a true revolutionary, he would have never made it on a ballot anywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know people get angry at me for that because it's like, oh, and I went out of my way to support Ron Paul. I understand because, listen, I loved a lot of what he had to say.
Yeah,
I really did. But the problem is, you know, once he got all involved in all that, first of all, they marginalized him and, you know, put him aside, you know, in the public's mind as best they could and just made him into a fringe candidate. And then on top of it, you know, we all know that was manipulated anyway because the passionate supporters that were coming out and the new registrations for the Republican Party, I mean, you don't think they were there to vote for the guy with the magic underwear, do you? You know? This is what the deal was, is that he was energizing the Republican base, even for people that did not want to participate in this left-right paradigm, because it was like, wait a minute, we might have a chance to effect a change here. So as soon as I realized that that's the way that was going, I said to myself, there is no way that this guy is even going to come close. You know, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, that was a big hit for me too, because when he did that, I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know, if I was in his situation, I would have just stuck to my guns and just wrote it out. But again, in that politics stuff, man, you got to play ball. And it's amazing that they even let him be on the debates or even be brought up in anything. I told my mom, you know, back when Ron Paul and all this stuff was going on before Barry got reselected, I mean.
Very good.
I was telling my mom, I said, you know, have you ever heard of Ron Paul? And she was like, Ron Paul? She was like, who is that? And I was like, he's in the race pretty much, you know, check him out. And she really fell in love with what he was saying, and she really liked him, you know, his approach and the way he was, you know, very well spoken. Ron Paul is a very well spoken individual. So I kind of turned her onto it. But again, it was just fascinating to me that they even allowed him to even get where he was. And to see him jump on the Republican side like that, yeah, that was a big hit for me. And then on down the line, I just seen how they did him wrong over and over again. So, I mean, it kind of fizzled out. But at the same time, you can say what you want about Ron Paul or what he stood for or what he represented. But at the same time, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have met a lot of wonderful, amazing people that I met via social media and even in real life. I mean, I met some people that I never, you know, the chances of me meeting them were there, but if it wasn't for him uniting the people the way he did, I probably wouldn't have interacted with these people, and, you know, I'll leave it at that. But I just think it's pretty bad, man, that when we do have somebody that comes along that's actually, you know, not necessarily speaking for us, but speaking to us and saying, hey, you know, we can change D.C., or we can manipulate it and make it a little bit better. yeah, they completely tried to destroy his image and destroy, even having him have a voice. So that was pretty interesting time to be alive, I'll say that much, to see all that come about.
Oh, absolutely. And what the problem is for me, though, is that I'm kind of two minds on this subject, which is, on the one hand, I agree with you that it was great to even have him be part of the discussion, because you wouldn't even dream that somebody who is...
No, not at all.
That much, in juxtaposition to something as large as the Federal Reserve would get anywhere, as far as the public mind is concerned, as far as the debate is concerned regarding these issues. He was actually able to get some of his ideas out there. Not very many.
No, not at all.
But, to even get the slightest little bit of this descent into the public stream of consciousness, was definitely seeming like a victory. But at the same time, the way they quashed his candidacy, the way they turned around and just, first of all, he was infiltrated from within and without. We know that now. And there was no way that it was going to go anywhere. It just seems like yet again another opportunity to control the opposition. And therefore, and I'm not saying that Ron Paul himself was involved with controlled opposition. What I'm saying is that he was viable opposition. And what they do is they turn around and infiltrate and control the dialogue regarding the individual. They turn around, they marginalize them, and then they say, well, that's okay, that didn't work anyway. But remember, we're still here. The donkey and the elephant are still here for you, people.
Yep.
So, please partake.
Yep.
And it's just it's kind of again another one of those wonderful double-edged swords where, the debate was interjected into the stream of consciousness, but at the same time it was marginalized, controlled, and quashed. And it's just sort of like why can't we just do this another way?
Right, and that's what I have. That's what I was touching on earlier with the approach and the way that we approach. These things. I think that's an intellectual battle in the future. But either way, the whole political party thing, the two parties, like I said, it's voting for lesser of two evils, which boggles my mind that people would even contribute to that. But also, it's another way to keep us separated. Because, hey, let's get two of these people in a room from different political parties and have them debate each other. When in reality, it's like pro wrestling, Chuck. It's just like pro wrestling for me when it comes to politics, because it's like, oh, I'm gonna rip his head off, and I'm gonna beat him, and I'm gonna take his title, and blah blah blah. But then when the cameras are off, they're going out to eat together, or they're going to the Grove, or whatever it may be. Not to mention when Bush was running against John Kerry, they're both Skull and Bones members. So how come that's never thrust into, hey, this is something we need to discuss? These are different political parties, but when you do your research, you find out that both of these individuals are part of the same secret society. That's never, that's so taboo to bring up in the discussion. If you remember, there was an interviewer that asked both of them. I don't know if it was the same interviewer, but he asked, they were both asked that question. They were like, what's up with this Skull and Bones stuff? And they were, we can't talk about that. That's a secret. Yeah. You can't discuss that.
It's a secret society. That's why it's a secret. Yeah.
Be quiet.
And of course, Kerry just had to wait his turn so that he could be doing what he's doing now, right?
Right.
I mean, and just to
everything falls into place, man.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then when you really look at it, with this whole presidents are related thing, I mean, I understand, that you may be connected to certain people, but when Obama's your eighth cousin, and you're related to all these people in your family tree, that's kind of suspect, man. Like that should be addressed. And I think it was a 12-year-old girl that stumbled upon this. Like, she was doing a project for school, and she was like, I found out that Obama's related to all these presidents and all these people, and that's never addressed. It's never brought up. I guess people would label that a conspiracy theory, but again, if that's true, if that's a valid point, then that needs to be addressed. How can you lie to people and say, hey, little Johnny, you can be president one day, and then when they get up to that position, be like, oh, well, you don't have the bloodline. You're not part of this elite bloodline that we select presidents from. So, sorry.
And again, this is not part of what the country was supposed to be. Yeah, little Johnny is supposed to be able to be president if he chooses to, and he does the right things, right?
Right.
anybody can be anything in America. That was the idea, right?
Yep.
But yeah, like you said, if you're not from the right bloodline, you don't have the right connections, you're done, man. I mean, imagine me running for president.
Right. Well, they left out that part. When they're talking, to little Johnny or any of us when we're growing up. Strive hard and you could be anything you want to. You could be president one day. But they forget the extra paragraph of other things that it takes to be president. They forgot to tell you that you got to play ball. You got to, you got to be a good liar. Got to be a good puppet. You got to, you might want to join a secret society that might help you out get into being president. And also this bloodline situation. So they forgot all that. They just tell you, hey, you can be president one day, which is another lie, man, that we're told as children, along with everything else, all the other lies, all the other things that are just thrust on us at an early age that people to this day continue to buy into. Now, going back to what I was talking about, my origins of getting into all this stuff, I mean, that's a big pill to swallow, Chuck, when you start realizing everything, damn near everything that you've been told has been a lie or an illusion that has been, put in front of you. So when you start to break out of that, I can understand why people don't want to do that. Why my friends and family members do not want to, they would call it rocking the boat, but, to distance themselves from that mind frame.
Yeah, but don't lose heart. But don't lose heart regarding that, Dennis, because like you said before, sometimes you drop something on somebody and they refuse to understand it for a year. Sometimes you plant seeds and it takes a while for them to grow. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that you can do also, which you don't necessarily get that instant gratification. Again, you know what? Instant gratification is one of the things that has gotten us into the trouble we're in this country, okay?
Right.
So let's we understand that, so let's try and really encompass that into our own viewpoints here. The thing is that you might have to plant a seed. It might take 5-10 years. I mean, the first time somebody mentioned the New World Order to me and everything else, I thought it was just one of the craziest things I ever heard in my life, right? But then when I started to see that these things were coming up, and I mean, okay, fine, there was a Ministry song called NWO and all that kind of stuff. You remember that? It had Bush on it, being sampled over and over again, A New World Order.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And, okay, all right, so maybe there's a little something to it. But then when you start to examine the things that are going on, and the secret deals that are being cut and everything else, all of a sudden that crazy conspiracy theory seems a whole lot more plausible than the nonsense that has been shoved down your throat all these years. Right. And along that line, we talked about Kerry real quickly, and the reason why I struck upon this in my head is because I just was shaking my head walking away from trying to follow what was going on with this ISIS, ISIL, IS, whatever.
Oh, man.
The newest boogeyman, the brand new Al-Qaeda, since they decapitated that and told you that we won that war. Now we need a new opponent in the war on terror, and it is ISIL. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I did a little bit of a presentation on Obama's press conference the other day. Of course, he's just a corporate spokesperson, and, although I'm not a doctor, I do play one on TV. Okay, fine. But, what is it that you see about that? Because all I see is here we go again with another narrative, another excuse to continue into Iraq, which has now, become the new cash cow, let's just say, for the military-industrial complex, right?
Right.
Because, look, Afghanistan wasn't making them enough money, and why not have two wars that are perpetual anyway? And as we speak, we have had a presence in Afghanistan much longer than we did in Vietnam, but, who's counting?
Right, and I mean, I'm with you on that. I think, even if I hate to say this, but even if they wiped out all, quote unquote terrorist groups or terrorist threats, the next week they would come up with another one. They'd be like, oh, well, we didn't know about this group, but they're the new threat. And I think that's what the ISIS situation is. It's just another. They have to create that fear, And when I saw this picture of the guy, he was using his cell phone. He was out front of the White House, and he took a picture, and it was like, ISIS is here. We're everywhere. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, they're probably behind that. The government is probably behind that to create fear in people to think, oh, well, a terrorist attack could happen again. You know, they got to create that fear to keep the war on terror going. Because let's be honest, man, the war on terror, we know, is just another another never-ending thing, just like the war on drugs. Because, you know, we see how good the war on drugs is going, right, Chuck? We see how great that's going.
Well, you know, I've stated this on my show, and I don't know if you've considered this, but I bet you have. Well, I bet the listener that you probably have considered this. I don't know how much you've looked into it, but, you know, even I noticed, by the way, that some of the mainstream was like seizing upon the whole, you know, war on drugs narrative recently. It's all integrated, because what we have is, if you notice, the wave of street drugs in this country and the wave of so-called drug epidemics. There's trips on my tongue, baby. I do it every show. But the thing is, regarding the epidemics, which are domestic, right? You ever notice that they fall right in line very, very conveniently with our adventures into other countries? We had a heroin epidemic because we had access to the Golden Triangle, right? During the 70s. Now, as soon as that went away, of course, we were involved in the whole Iran-Contra, South American adventures, death squads, supporting all these different dictators and strong men and everything else.
You got it.
Throughout South America, all of a sudden we have a crack cocaine, and first a cocaine, then a crack cocaine epidemic.
Right.
Okay, fine. Now they got busted. Ollie North had to explain himself. Okay, fine. We all of a sudden didn't really have a perpetual war. So what happened? All of a sudden, everybody in the inner city became a chemist. They started making designer drugs and crystal meth and everything else. Oh, okay. Well, that was convenient. As soon as we got involved in the war on terror, what did we do but exploit? And all of a sudden, just by coincidence again, the heroin epidemic returns. The opioid epidemic is hitting all over the place. And where is this stuff coming from? Well, just coincidentally, one of those places we had to go after because of the events of 9/11. And they're promoting or producing now, 90% of the world's heroin supply is coming out of there. And not only that, but it's also provable that our troops are protecting the crops.
Right.
So, isn't that rather convenient? And just so you know, Dennis, I believe I got Hecty on with me here, who's a caller and listener. How you doing, Hecty?
I'm okay, you know. How things been for you, you know?
Well, you hear me ranting and stuff, which I was real tired before I went on with Dennis, I got to tell you. And what do you think of Dennis? Have you heard any of his shows or anything before, Hecty?
No, not yet. That seems interesting character. Everyone has their different points of coming into finding out what they know of. Mine was more of a good point at my end, but
Well, Hecty's an interesting character, Dennis. I'll tell you this much. Well, actually, you know what, Hecty, why don't you explain kind of who you are, because I know Dennis probably doesn't know you. So, go ahead and tell him.
Let's just say I used to do some DARPA stuff for a living for a while. And then before that, there was kind of a few incidents and all. Getting a gun at the back of my head. Either I worked for him for a while, or all the ones I love get put down. And that's kind of a light summarization of what's going on with that.
Yeah, so Hecty's an interesting cat too, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if Chuck vouches for you, you know, I got to agree with Chuck. Again, Chuck, I appreciate, man, everything you do and helping us out on our shows as well. You know, because we are, you know, I mean, we do the coalition thing. That's a whole other aspect of it. But when it comes down to it, man, NWO Truth Radio is, you know, kind of my creation and something I take very passionately. It's sort of like my child at this point. So, you know.
You know what? Before we get too deep into anything else, do me a favor, Dennis, and just tell people where they can find the shows, a couple names of the shows. I've been on the Arsenal of Sound, the Friday Night Super Show. I've been on a bunch of them, but you know, go ahead and give them a quick rundown on those shows and everything.
Right on. You can find us on NWO Truth Radio, on Blog Talk Radio. We also have a Facebook page called NWO Truth Radio. We have a group as well on Facebook and a few other social media sites that we integrate with. You can find me on Friday nights. I do the Friday Night Super Show on NWO Truth Radio at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my co-host, Lee Peer. And also we have some other hosts that work at the network, Brandon Council. He does While You Were Sleeping on Saturday nights. We have James Impending. He does his show. Matter of fact, tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, he's going to be doing his show on NWO Truth Radio. We do the Arsenal of Sound on Sundays, where we just play music. That's another thing I wanted to get into in a minute, Chuck, is my passion for music and how much I appreciate real music, whether it's hip-hop, whatever genre it is. I appreciate people out there that put together real music and are really dedicated to their craft, and that's kind of what the Arsenal of Sound is. We play all types of artists from Jordan Page to Payday Monsanto, et cetera, and that show is on Sunday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Monday we kick it off with Ladies Night, where the ladies kick all of us out. All of us males have to leave, and the ladies take over the studio at NWO Truth Radio for Ladies Night, and that's at, I believe, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday, Lee Peer and another host, they do Date Night with the Constitution, where that show is kind of went off tracks. Not necessarily covering the Constitution anymore. They cover a lot of things, but a great show. Wednesday night, we do Breaking the Oath Breakers, which is actually one of my favorite shows on the network, from a good friend of mine, Ted Jotty. He does a wonderful job on that show. He's actually introduced me to a few people I had no idea about, a few authors and other political activists. So check that show out on Wednesdays. And then Thursday, we kind of take a night off. We tend to do a roundtable discussion sometimes on Thursdays, but either way, Thursday is kind of our night off. And then, again, Friday, we kick it off with the Friday Night Super Show, which is my show, which used to be the Dennis Ford Show, but we collaborated and merged with another network, so we do the Friday Night Super Show now. And Chuck has been on that show multiple times, and like I said, Chuck, you're always welcome to join us. I wanted to bring this up earlier. I don't know if it was Vincent that introduced me to you or vice versa, but I love what you do, Chuck, and I love Vincent, and I appreciate what you guys do. You guys are awesome, man. I just want to tell you that.
Well, listen, man, I really appreciate your time, definitely, and I've had a blast on some of the shows with you guys, and it's been just really awesome. And it was actually Vincent who introduced me to James Impending that caused this whole thing.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, Vincent, it all goes back to Vincent, man. I'm telling you, Vincent is a good dude, man, and I can't say anything bad about him, just like I can't say anything bad about you, Chuck. And we got to continue doing what we're doing. If we can collaborate and branch off of each other, I'm all for it. You let me know. Future broadcasts here on the Ochelli Effect, if you want me to join, not necessarily being a guest, but just call in, you let me know. I'll be here. And same for you. You can join us anytime you want.
Oh, man, look, you're welcome at any time, Dennis. I'll tell you, especially if I get onto a subject that definitely interests you, be more than happy to have you on. This is one of those things, and don't feel bad that I had Lee and James on first. James was the first guy I met from there. And,
no, not at all.
And Lee was just a logical person to bring on my show because...
Yeah, you guys are very similar. It's almost scary.
It's a little bit frightening, isn't it? Like I said on the one show, and I'm going to repeat this because I just thought it was, I don't know where I came up with it, but it just seemed to make perfect sense. Lee and I are exactly the kind of two guys that when we get together, we might get into a fist fight and bust each other's faces up, but then a couple hours later, you might find us at the strip club explaining to the manager that any room we are in is, in fact, the champagne room. So, just to put it that way. And Hector, I know I've been blowing you out a little bit, but what did you want to add into this discussion? So,
I just wanted to drop in. Remember that little topic I left in the chat yesterday for us about with Ukraine and that whole little debacle?
Well, I got to be honest with you, I haven't been in the chat in a little bit, but
no, I mean in Skype yesterday.
Oh, I didn't notice it because I haven't really checked my Skype messages. But about the Ukraine though, let's how about we just touch on that because I'm sure Dennis will have something to say about it. I noticed that got kind of put aside for this ISIL deal. And of course, it's been an ongoing, problem. And why not? Let's just drag the whole, Russian Federation problem into it. And now they are more isolated than they have been since the days of the Soviet Union, according to Barry. Et cetera, et cetera.
Barry Santoro.
Yeah, there you go. And which I even found funny. Another thing, really quickly, Dennis, is I know you probably aren't as crazy with the cartoons as I am. But I know you like some cartoons. Did you notice that on the Cleveland show, that that was the only mainstream cartoon I ever seen where, like, there was a guy actually just calling him Barry?
No, I didn't catch that.
Oh, it was hysterical. They did a whole thing where Cleveland gets aggravated and says that he needs to beat Barry on the court. He can't believe that Barry is Barack Obama and all that. And,
yeah, I'm going to check that out. But I find it fascinating when I'm talking to people. And they're talking about Obama, and I'm like, "Oh, you mean Barry?" They're like, "Who's Barry?" I'm like, "Oh, here we go." Now I got to break all this down, explain it to people. People don't know; they have no idea, But again, that's another thing. The whole Ukraine thing. Again, that's something I'm pretty. I haven't really been following. Like I said, I do follow multiple things. I have heard of it, what's going on there, but not really staying up to date on it. So, I mean, if you guys have anything you can let me know, that'd be great.
See, I think they've successfully dropped that out of the narrative now, because we're thoroughly distracted with the Ferguson deal. We're thoroughly distracted. I mean, not we really, but I mean, the general public is thoroughly distracted with Ferguson, is thoroughly distracted with ISIS, whatever. The new boogeyman with the towel on his head.
Not to mention the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Oh, and you're right, sir. I forgot to mention the Ice Bucket Challenge and the Bullet Bucket Challenge and whatever else is going on.
Oh yeah, the gasoline.
All craziness. Speaking of those cartoons, though, and something I wanted to mention, because I'll tell you, it was one of the first things that jumped out at me on your Facebook page was that you watched the Boondocks.
Oh yeah.
I love that show, man. My favorite. My favorite was one of the early episodes, though. And I know I'm going to butcher this quote, guys. I'm sorry, but I mean, it was so beautiful that he comes out. He goes, "Let's see, what was it now? Jesus was black. Ronald Reagan is the devil, and the government is lying to you about 9/11. Right. Thank you." And he gets off the microphone.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched Boondocks for ever since it came out, where it was a live cartoon there on Adult Swim. But either way, I was talking to the creator, Aaron. I think his last name is Gruder, Aaron Gruder, something like that. But we were trying to communicate with him to get him on the show, just to interview him. But yeah, man, that's what we need more of. We need more style cartoons like that. That kind of blur the lines of comedic cartoons and actually, putting the truth in there, because there's a lot of truth in the Boondocks, whether it's racism. I mean, they got a black dude on there, Uncle Ruckus, that is racist against black people, and some of the things he covers and talks about are if a white dude said that, people would have a problem, but it's okay when Uncle Ruckus says it, and he's another one we were trying to contact to get on the show, possibly, but got lost in the mix there. But you just reminded me, I might try to get them on.
Oh, I would, you know what, definitely pencil me in to be part of that somehow, because I absolutely love that show, man.
Right. I remember when they were, they were a newspaper cartoon. That's how far back I go with the Boondocks.
Nice.
Before they even became a cartoon on television.
I remember some of their older works, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty good for me.
It's good stuff, man. I remember they did a Martin Luther King episode where Martin Luther King.
Oh, that is that's one of the greatest.
Yeah, and I play the episode for people sometimes, just to Martin Luther King Day. I might post it on my page or something. I just put, not the full length episode, but just some of the things that Martin Luther King was saying in that episode, and it's pretty funny, but at the same time it's pretty sad, man. To think about.
Which is hysterical, because look, all right, now I've done some work on the King assassination, so I've taken it as a serious subject. But when I saw this, it absolutely cracked me up to no end, because it was just I mean, and we only got 20 minutes left here, so I'm just going to do this really briefly. But the thing is, basically, imagine if Dr. King had not died when he had been shot. He had actually been in a coma. So he's in a coma since '68. He wakes up in like 2000 or 2001. I can't remember which, but either way, put it in that kind of context, and cannot believe what he has seen as far as what happened to. Well, it's black people, but it's really the whole world. But just, for the context of the show, it's like, what has happened to black people since, I went and marched and did all this other stuff. And he winds up saying, and what's funny to me is I don't think they took a lot of flack for that episode even.
No, not at all. Not at all. I like that episode.
And he goes on and literally just starts ripping into, well, what is wrong with all of you? Because they're dancing around and like giving shout outs and having gang truces and all this other stuff at this Martin Luther King rally. To support nonviolence and, the forward-moving, thinking of black people in general. And he's watching all this nonsense, all this, just crazy stuff, and he just winds up screaming at all of them and going, to hell with all of you, I'm going to Canada. And he leaves.
Right.
And he's just...
He was like, I'm not going to get to the mountaintop with you because I'm going to Canada.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was hilarious.
I could not. When I can't control my laughter at something like on a TV program, it's good. And if nobody has seen that out there, you got to see that. Boone. I don't really like to tell people to go check out the cartoons that I like to try and
but that's a good one.
Decompress from. I decompress with a lot of cartoons, but that one is one of the most profound things. If you take a step back and you think about what you're looking at on that cartoon. Wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I would love to participate in interviewing those people.
Yeah, that was actually, just an episode of Boondocks, but that's actually a genius concept to think about and actually make an episode out of. And the way they did it was very, very, like I said, it's very funny, but at the same time, it's kind of, you're like, really? It's kind of, it'll get to you. It'll make you laugh, but at the same time, it'll make you think, and that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah, the stuff that is most profoundly funny in my mind is not, punchline jokes. It is the stuff that really does lay out some truth out there.
Right.
A lot of times comedians have that ability, and I discussed that a little bit with a stand-up comedian on my show once about how, comedians have a license to sort of push certain issues out there. We all like to point to Bill Hicks and stuff like that. I don't know if you do, Dennis, but... you're aware of Bill Hicks, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Very familiar with him.
Definitely one of those guys that the people seize upon a lot, but really it's all throughout the stand-up industry where you can see a lot of truth come out there. But
George Carlin is another one.
Absolutely. But to see a produced cartoon like that was just, and it's just seriously edgy from one point of view, but at the same time, it's loaded with so much truth, you got to respect it.
Right. Bill Hicks... talk about him real quick. Bill Hicks actually did a stand-up where he was talking about the Elite. I think that's the title of it. If you go to YouTube and you type in Bill Hicks and the Elite, there'll be like this little live-action puppet show that somebody put together to a stand-up. But basically what he's describing is when Clinton came into office and they take Clinton into this little room and they show him, the screen comes down and he's sitting at a table with like 12 industrialists, people that got him in office. And the screen comes down, and they show him a film of the Kennedy assassination of, a film that nobody's ever seen before. And then when the film ends, they ask the president, they're like, any questions? And at the time I'm watching, I'm like, this is hilarious, but it's not, because it's truth. It's basically what we're dealing with. And Bill Hicks was able to blend the lines. You hear people laughing in the background in the crowd and stuff. But for me, I laughed about it, but at the same time, I'm like, this is... It's pretty heavy stuff, man, to be able to mix that with comedy.
Absolutely.
That's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely, and that's the serious edge of that is, any questions? Yeah.
Right.
Who's my actual boss? Because that was the last guy that tried to be his own boss, and that didn't work out too well.
No, it didn't.
It didn't. You got something to say about that, Hector?
Yeah, but that's good. I always did love that one. But going back to a little topic with the Ukraine real fast, I have seen a lots of spewing of shit with the help of the week. how they've been loving twisting with that, to where they saying 1,000 Russian soldiers, 10,000 Russian soldiers, and that's like, get the numbers straight, you little shitheads.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, just like with everything, I mean, look, if we couldn't get you to pay attention before, let's just bulk up the numbers.
It's like,
you weren't impressed by the suspect-looking beheading of a journalist? Okay, no problem.
Right.
We'll threaten some more, and then we'll tell you that there are 250 Syrian soldiers that were mass executed by these people.
Okay.
Look at how dangerous they are. This is exactly the kind of thing that goes on. This is the propaganda game, Hector.
Yeah.
Right.
I know. I'm just figuring, but here's something that they've been trying to pass off with Russia, and this has been hitting a lot of the hacker community too this week. With you probably seen a lot of these bankers and all that claiming people hacking each other and all that. Usually. It's like how Bank of America tried to hack itself recently for a bit of cash, and they got caught about with their pants down.
Wait a minute. Are you trying to tell us that the banking game is rigged? The Monopoly guy is actually paying himself off? Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
I know, none new there, but it's like, I was just having a laugh about that, to where they actually got caught with their pants down on that one.
Well, you gotta love how these guys always, the bankers are never the people to blame, right? But they do happen to finance both sides of every conflict, and either way, at the end of the day, they always win.
Yeah. Thinking of something to where I may have heard about this before with certain central banks are wanting more digital currency type crap. So yeah. And I saw this in one of my feeds lately.
Well, the reality, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe I'm just ignorant on the subject, is that all currency is essentially digital at this point. The little bits of paper that we do see, although, the printing press is running 24 hours a day,
I do.
They only represent a very small fraction of what's actually floating around in the computers, let's just say. And
yeah. I agree with you there.
And the way it seems to me, I almost have to embrace some of the people that say it would just be nice to see a massive EMP, like, engulf all this stuff and be done with it. But it's one of those quagmires, man, which unfortunately with like the last 12, 13 minutes we got here, we're not going to get too far with. But,
yeah. I just
Wall Street is the casino, and the owners are actually at the different bank branches. So that's just the way that goes.
Yeah,
well, the house always wins, Chuck.
And the house always wins eventually, anyway. No matter how much they might let jackpot roll out now and then. Believe that was the win.
That's the standard rule of Vegas, man.
You got it. So, look, Dennis, in the last, 10, 12 minutes we got here, I mean, is there anything that you want to touch upon that's, been on your mind lately or whatever? But before we do that, I want to say something, though. I really do appreciate you coming on with me tonight. I'm glad we did this. I hope you enjoyed it. Because I definitely wanted to get a spotlight on you for a minute, because I'm telling you, man, you blend into the wallpaper sometimes with these shows a little bit because you're just so mellow on the mic, apparently.
I know. I'm working on that, Chuck. I'm working on it.
But you are yelling sometimes just on mute. Now we've established that. We have broken down the fourth wall, ladies and gentlemen. So,
if anything,
you wanted to hit on, just before we close up shop on this one.
Yeah, if anything, I just had a few things I had to say, and then I'll probably get out of here because I'm going to jump over to another show, which actually Fritz Springmeyer is going to be on tonight. So I'm kind of pretty amped up to be able to talk to Fritz. I haven't talked to him all this time in radio. He's been somebody I've been trying to actually get a few minutes to talk to. But if anything, like I said, talking about the music industry earlier, that's kind of why I got into doing radio, was that when I started, again, quote-unquote, waking up or being aware of what's going on, I reached out to find out who was making music along these lines, who was actually putting out revolutionary activist music. And I found some incredible artists. Chuck, you know a lot of them. There's some that I'm still yet to find. So if anybody out there is listening, you can find me on Facebook at Dennis Ford. If you have any artists that talk about this kind of stuff or make music or are activists in their music, please let me know, because we do feature them on the Arsenal of Sound. But music is something that I kind of wanted to carve a niche in this stuff, in this movement, again, if you want to call it that, for myself. And I think it's very vital. In the future, we're going to all try to work together. Maybe we'll start a donation thing or whatever we can do to create a festival where we can all get together, not necessarily a Woodstock type thing, but where we can have a concert, maybe a 3-day thing over a weekend where we can all camp out and actually see some of these artists perform live. And I think that we need that. You know, that hasn't really been done yet. And I think that's something that I want to see in my lifetime. I really want to see that come about. So I'm going to be working on that coming up in 2015 to get that underway. Whether I'm going to be the main guy orchestrating it or part of it, it doesn't really matter to me. I do want to see that happen. Chuck, if you can be a part of that with helping us promote it and get the word out to people, please do. And other than that, I'm going to be doing my thing over NWO Truth Radio. And like I said, anybody listening can check me out there on Blog Talk Radio. And also, we're going to be branching out to doing live videos. Not necessarily live videos, but I'm going to be doing some videos on my YouTube channel, and I'll be posting those eventually. I'm going to go out and actually hit the streets and actually interact with people and not really do the Mark Dice thing, where he goes out and makes fun of people. Right. But I'm going to go out and try to actually interact with people and break down some doors, and that's coming as well. And we're going to branch out and do some live shows via Google Plus and YouTube. Me and Brandon Council are working on that, so look forward to all that coming. We also are working on some T-shirts and some other things. But again, Chuck, I'm not really in this for money or any kind of financial backing. It would be nice. I'm not going to shut it down. But I'm not in this for that. And like I said, if you can help us promote any of that, Chuck, please do. And same with you. If you got anything going on, please, as your shows come about, post them on my page or let me know about them. And I'll do my best to promote them as well. And again, I want to thank you for having me on, man. I had a great time.
No, really, I appreciate your time. The only odd thing I want to throw at you real quick before you go is that I was really surprised you didn't know that Payday Monsanto song the other week, because that has been my favorite for some time now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I come across so much of his music. If I showed you some of the stuff I have of his, I'm sure there's songs that people haven't heard or anything, and then people will throw songs at me. They're like, hey, I got this, and stuff I never heard before, and he has such a large catalog, man. And speaking of Payday, we're going to be having him on in September sometime because he does have a new album coming out, and we're going to talk to him and probably get some exclusives from that album. And it's always cool, man, to catch up with Payday, man. I love talking to that dude. Again, people can say what they want about his views on certain things. I'm not going to get into that, but when it comes to music, nobody is really on his level. When it comes to production and lyrics. And I have friends that tell me they love hip-hop, and I play Payday for them, and it completely blows their mind. Like, they don't even know how to react to it. Some people love it, and others, they just don't know how to react to it because he's not really rapping about drugs and, the mainstream hip-hop stuff that we deal with. So, yeah, much respect to Payday. And, Chuck, when we do get him on, if you're interested, man, we'll have you on that show, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. I really love doing the Arsenal Sound. That's the show you're going to have him on, right?
Maybe Arsenal Sound. If anything, it'll be Friday Night Super Show. We have to work out with him, see what his schedule looks like. But I'm shooting for that in September. This coming Friday on the Friday Night Super Show, Chuck, you might want to check this show out. We're having an author on, James Perloff. He wrote a book called Truth is a Lonely Warrior, and it talks about everything that we've been talking about for the last 2 hours here. Right. So definitely check him out. He's going to be on Friday night. He's a wealth of knowledge, good dude. I talked to him via emails. I haven't talked to him on the phone yet, but I will, and he's going to be joining us Friday night. He's such a good dude, man. He sent me out a book. I emailed him, and he sent me out the book the next day, autographed, and I can't put the book down, man. It's very addicting, this book. So if you can, Chuck, check that out, and then Friday night, if you want, man, give us a call just to hang out, man, just say hello, because, we always enjoy having you on, Chuck. I want you to know that.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you, and I'll let you go and do your thing, because I know you got something else to do. But I really appreciate you coming on tonight. And what can I say, man? We're gonna keep working together on some things, and we're gonna make some different things happen. That's what we're gonna do.
I'm all for it, man. You know I am. If anything, Chuck, I'll shoot you. I don't know if you have my personal numbers or anything like that, but yeah, we can talk off the air too, man. That's a possibility if you're interested in that as well.
Oh yeah. Just just send me a Facebook message. I'll give you a call.
All right, that'll work. And again, right. I want to thank you, Chuck, and Vincent as well. Everybody at UCY TV. Continue doing what you're doing, Chuck, and never give up, man. Just keep fighting, because that's what we got to do.
Exactly, brother, and you do the same.
All right.
All right. Take care.
You too, and you have a good night, Chuck. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right.
So, Hector.
Yeah.
Man, how you been? I haven't had you on my air in a while.
I've been good. It's just so many things with the hacking going. Hacking.
Yeah, well, isn't that the nature of the beast, my friend?
Yeah, I know. Probably one or two of the things that flew by my stream earlier in the week. Mm-hmm. Some goofball hacker tried to put a threat on one of the head Sony execs' jets, where they put a bomb threat. I was laughing my ass off about that. It's like, God, they're working with the PSN, they're having fun with it, and it's like, they try to claim that, and it's like, they're stealing off someone else's work. Isn't that the usual?
Well, of course. And, I'll tell you something, too.
Yeah.
Just before, because I'm going to run out of time here real soon, just want to let everybody know I am trying to work on this whole 9/11 special thing, because I will be on the air for the 13th time that 9/11 comes around after that incident. And it should be an interesting show, what I have lined up so far. I don't want to get too deep on it, but some interesting guests have agreed to appear. We shall see how that goes. Of course, coming up on Tuesday night, I'll be doing the Liberty Beacon thing again. And I really want to say to all the listeners out there, thank you for listening. Thank you for paying attention. Please stay tuned to UCY.tv. Of course, there's the chat room, which runs 24 hours a day, regardless of whether my mouth is running or not. That thing is going on. And there's always something interesting on this network. I can't even keep track of all the hosts and shows and everything else. So, please do that, by the way, if you're catching this further downstream, and if you're catching it on something else like, the TuneIn app or the other things that you can. Really appreciate it, and anybody that wants to get a hold of me can do it via my email, which is Chuck, CHUCK, 1972 at Lycos, LYCOS.com. Okay, so, just before my obnoxious bumper kicks in and cuts us off, sir, the hacking thing has been pretty interesting over the past year, I would say, but in the past month it's been weird, right?
Yeah, and the little thing that, to sum it up and all, they tried to claim their our little Osiris little bitch with in that sense again, where they're trying to reinforce it. It was so funny.
Man, oh man,
Yeah.
It's such a strange world, and you know what? Watching what goes on with a lot of these people is just... it's entertaining to some degree, but at the same time, it's also frightening. I don't understand, like that whole thing you were talking about with Bank of America hacking itself. That was pretty funny. A lot of this stuff going on is pretty...
I know, it's like... You probably seen about this about Goldman Sachs and FBI earlier, to where they are supposedly claimed by Russia. The usual MO with that.
Well, that's one of the new wonderful claims all the time is that, we're being hit with all kinds of cyber attacks. Our enemies are attacking us electronically just like they would physically, et cetera, et cetera. And who is the enemy? Is the enemy of my enemy my friend? Probably not, but that's what they're going to try and tell me, right?
Yeah.
So what can you say? What can you do? And that's just the way I look at it, man. We got to make a serious, monumental change from the.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slap of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have just read two sources. Whenever I